button.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is the Falls of the James Group program, and we have a really great program tonight, Adventures in Turkey, Germany, and Newfoundland. So before we get started though, I just want to let you know, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. After every presentation, we'll have a few minutes to do question and answer. And if you forget, we'll get you at the end. And then after our 3 presentations, we will have Connor Kish, who's the Virginia Chapter Political and Legislative Director. He's going to talk a little bit about working with delegates and senators in the General Assembly. And then we'll have some advocacy updates from Lee Williams and Glen Besa. And then I'll just give a few updates on announcements of upcoming programs and activities. So welcome, and let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, Adventures in Turkey, Germany, and Newfoundland. So we're going to first start with Ralph Grove, who is the Sierra Club Virginia Chapter Executive Committee Chair. And he's our chapter's Outings Leader and a member of Falls of the James Group. And he's going to start off talking about the Lycean Way. So Ralph, why don't you take it away, please? And you're muted.
Get my screen set up here. Can you see it okay now?
Yes.
All right, cool. So the Lycean Way is a hiking trail. It runs along the southwestern coast of Turkey and the Lycian Peninsula. You can see the map of Turkey in the top right with the that part outlined in red, trail itself in the bottom. It runs from Fethiye in the west to Antalya in the east. It's a long trail, 500 kilometers or so. We didn't do the whole thing, of course. We just did a little bit of it. That's on the next slide. The trail actually dates back about 4,000 years, not as in its current state, of course, but during the Lycian civilization, a lot of these paths were formed. And of course, that part of the world has been subject to many empires since then. For the last 100 years, of course, it's part of the Republic of Turkey. And so the Lycian Way, as it is now, consists of old mountain trails, village paths, and roads of various sorts. The trail was conceived by Kate Clow, who's a Brit who lives in Turkey. And she came up with the idea of establishing it as a walking trail that would appeal to both local residents and tourists. It opened in 1999 with the help of some corporate sponsors and lots of volunteers. So it's a history similar to that of the Appalachian Trail. The trail can be hiked in the spring and the fall. It's open all year round, of course, but the summer is very hot on the Mediterranean coast, kind of like southern Florida. Not a good time to hike. And the winters are icy and snowy on the mountains. Also not a good time to hike. So most people go April, May, October, November. We went at the very end of May, and it was the end of the hiking season. There were very few people left on the trail because it was getting hot already. The trail is very well marked. You can see on the left the red and white slash. That's the trail blaze. At junctions, there are signs like the one in the middle pointing the way. And then on the image on the right, you see the little red cross on the rock. That is a do not go sign. So that tells you to stay away from false turns or dangerous places. So it was very easy to follow as a result. We hiked the little section in green. We just did a 3-day hike from a town called Ovacik near Fethiye to Gav Urali, which is about 25 miles to the south. We were on the trail for 3 days. We had 4 overnights. Our tour agent arranged absolutely everything for us. all of our overnight stays, meals, car and bag shuttles, everything we needed. They even took our car from start to finish, so it would be there when we ended. They were really good. They were on call 24 hours a day whenever we needed support too. So it was a pleasure to work with them. We hiked a total of about 25 miles over 3 days. This is a sample of the trail guides that they gave us. This is the first. We had about an 8-page trail guide every day. It had detailed information about the trail as well as pictures of the junctions, signs, things, interesting things to look for. It was very well done. This is where we started, day 1. We hiked from Ovechik to Faralia, total of about 13 kilometers. The elevation chart at the bottom gives you an image of the climb we made. It was a elevation change of about 500 meters up and down, pretty similar to what you'd encounter if you hiked up and down the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Shenandoah National Park. This is the place where we started. This is the Garcia Resort Hotel at the beginning of the trail. Virtually everybody who hikes the trail starts off here with a night of luxury before getting on the trail. It's a very nice place and a good way to start. And here's the beginning of the trail right next to the Garcia Resort. This is about halfway up the mountain. You can see there's a pretty quick elevation change as we're going up the trail, and you see the Mediterranean and Aegean on the left. I'm not sure which that is. We're right in the area where it transitions. And right down in the very bottom left, you can see some red roofs. That's the town of Ovechik where we started, where the resort was. So we had climbed up about 2/3 of the way at this point. The trail got steep in places. This is an older section of the trail. Don't know how far back it dates. You can see that it's pretty well constructed with a rock wall on the right and stones to pave it in the center. There's an old cistern on the left. That's Narai at the top. My ex-wife, she was my hiking partner on this trek. She still lives in Turkey. This is one of the many entrepreneurs we encountered along the trail. He'd set up a little soda stand under a shade tree. He's selling orange juice, pomegranate juice, and some other beverage. I'm not sure what that is, tea maybe. There were several of these along the way. This is at the top. There's gorgeous views of the mountains. We weren't quite to the top of the mountains. There's a coastal range of mountains all along the southern coast, but we were close to the top. When the trail was built, as I said, it encompassed many village paths that people used to get up and down. Nowadays, roads have been put in so you can actually drive to the villages at the top. And as you can see, there are electric and phone lines as well. So they've come into the modern era. There were parasailers coming off of the mountains at some locations as well. There's a village in the upper right of the picture. You can see some of the buildings. This was the first village we encountered. And we saw the signs along the way for Halil's Cafe. That's where we stopped and had lunch. There were several entrepreneurs in the villages as well who had set up cafes to service the hikers. As you can see, the signs in English because most of the hikers were European. This was one of the cafes. It's a small house, solar hot water system, dining room overlooking the valley. Not the one that we ate at, but you can see the menu hanging down on that signboard from the roof. And this is Halil's Cafe. These are Gözleme women. Gözleme is a favorite lunchtime treat of mine. in Turkey. The woman sitting to the right in the foreground is making them. She takes a ball of dough and rolls it out on that round board until it's paper thin, and then adds filling. In this case, she's putting chopped spinach on there, and there's a little bowl of cheese just below her left hand that she'll top that with as well. Then she folds it in half into a semicircle, gives it to the woman in the back, and she's cooking the gozlema over an inverted bowl over a wood fire. It's like an upside down wok. And she turns it a couple of times until it's brown, and you can see the finished ones on the left on that silver tray. And then they're rolled up a bit and sliced, and there's my gozlema lunch. We had gozlema with cucumber, tomatoes, and locally grown honey, or locally harvested honey as well. And there was a cup of tea in the back there that you can't see. So we were fed very well all along the way, I have to say. Day 2, we hiked to a town called Yedibarunlar, also known as Gay. And this was a little more challenging hike, as you can see from the elevation gain. We went up 500 meters, down a couple of hundred, and back up. So we were done in by the time we got to the end of this one. There's Narai on the trail at the top. The place we're going is in the background on that ridge that you can see. So we still have quite a bit of footage left to cover at this point. Here's the view down from the trail. As you can see, there's a pretty sharp descent there, a cliff alongside the trail. Fortunately, the trails were pretty wide, so it wasn't dangerous at all hiking through there. But you did have to be careful. There were plenty of places where you could easily fall over the side, and it was a long way down. But the views were spectacular the entire way. We were always looking at mountains on the left and ocean and beach on the right as we went along. This is another stand along the way. These guys were selling tea and ayran. Ayran is a fermented milk drink that's very popular in Turkey. This was one of the campgrounds we passed. You can see the sign that says Turk Dome's Glamping, Dush WC Buffet, that's shower, toilet, restaurant. And a very creative piece of wooden artwork there marking the entrance. This was one of the tents in that campground. They were geodesic domes covered in some kind of plastic sheeting. And this was a cairn we passed along the way, made from, I guess that's a sheep skull with a rock on it. Rather ominous looking, but there wasn't anything particularly dangerous in the neighborhood. I just thought that was kind of curious. And this is an old cistern or old well that we passed. It was dry, but it had become the base for cairn art. Everybody that went by stacked up their own cairn, and there were dozens and dozens of cairns all around there. It's kind of cool to see. And now we're getting close to another village. You can see there's a tractor and car on the left. Farmers are out there sitting under the tree having lunch, actually. And there's a signpost up ahead. So once we got to the top of the mountains, much of the trail was along roads like this, which our guides referred to as dirty roads. But it's still very much an active agricultural area. So there were farms, sheep, beehives, lots of business. This is one of the terraced fields that were common there. There were several rock walls and flat terraces in between them. Not quite sure what they were growing there, but something. And this place, when we first saw it, I thought perhaps it might be an old mosque, but in fact, it's a cistern. Inside that threshold right in front of me, there's a deep pool of water. Not quite sure how deep it was. It didn't go in to look, but evidently there's a spring there. So this is where they were saving water. And there's a little watering trough outside for the animals. This is where we spent our, I guess our second night on the trail, a place called the Yeti Barunlar Lighthouse, a little inn with a spectacular view, swimming pool, all the comforts of home. It was a very comfortable place to stay, great accommodations. Food was excellent. They fed us so well. I think I actually gained weight despite all the trekking. This was a typical breakfast of vegetables of all sorts, tomatoes, cucumbers, bread, tea, all kinds of toppings, jams and jellies for the bread. Narai was eating eggs and cheese as well. I had the vegan option with a view of the Mediterranean in the background. Our last day on the trail, we went from Yeti Barunlar to our endpoint, Gavarali. The elevation chart at the bottom shows the full trail, the red line I put there because that's where we bailed out. The descent at the end was quite steep, although the elevation chart magnifies it a bit. And it was, that particular area was a dirt trail covered with loose rock. So trying to go downhill on that stuff was a bit like skating. Once you stepped on it, you just kept going, could hardly stop. So we just decided we did not want to do a 500-foot descent on that kind of trail. So we called our outfitter and said, we're finished. And he kindly sent a car to pick us up. This is the oldest olive tree on the Lycean Way. It's a huge thing in the middle of an olive grove. I don't know exactly how old it is, but that's all one tree. We passed goat herds here and there, some friendly goats looking at us curiously. And this was a cute sign for Fatma Pension. Fatma runs several pensions in Bell, which is the town where we stopped our hike. This is Fatma at one of her pensions. She said she hosts like 75 hikers during the peak season in her 3 or 4 pensions that she runs in this town. She has her own grapevines, chickens, goats, various kinds of animals and gardens that she uses to feed her hikers. This is her dining room. We were the only 2 people here on this day because it was the tail end of the season. But we had lunch with her and a drink while we were waiting for our ride. You can see the wood stove there on the left. That's quite common in this area. This was our last stay, the end of the hike in Gavarali. This was a little inn. There were several cabins. One of them you can see right behind the port swing where we stayed, and the dining room on the right. This was the inside of our cabin. It was quite compact. There was a bed in the loft up above, one below, a tiny kitchen and a bathroom. Just room enough for 2 people. And then this is the dining room. It was run by a nice family. You can see 3 generations of them here who lived in a trailer out back. A very nice trailer, but there was a cook stove and a heating stove right there in the middle where they actually cooked our dinner and breakfast. And this is the end of the trip. Right back on the beach. It's a little too cold to swim, but it was a nice day for wading. And When we got home, we had a nice surprise. Our feral cat had snuck into the house while we were away and given birth to kittens. So we had a litter of 1-week-old kittens in the bed. We rounded up a little house for her and put them all out on the porch where they lived for a while before they ran off eventually. So that's it. I'll quit there. If anybody has questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Wow, that was interesting. Okay, Lee, you said that was there good cell service on your portion of the trail?
There was cell service in the villages. So on each day we passed through 2 or 3 villages. And once we got within sight of a village, we had cell service, but other parts of the trail, no. The more remote parts, there was none.
Okay. Tyler said absolutely beautiful views, as I agree with. Oh my gosh, that was just amazing. And Nancy asked, you mentioned cheese in the meal. Did you have to forego your vegan preferences while hiking?
I did not. Yeah, there was plenty of vegan food for me to eat, all kinds of great vegetables and bread. And the Guzlima ladies made me a vegan version of Guzlima, so I had no problem finding things to eat. But I did cheat on the honey, though. They had local honey. I ate some of that, which is not strictly vegan.
Okay, and Gwen asked, can you get there without walking?
You can drive to the mountain villages and to the towns where we stopped. Yeah, they're all on the coastal highway. So
Okay.
it is possible to drive in now.
Okay, and Glenn asked, could you get by with just English?
Yes, I think our outfitters spoke English well enough, and since their people along the way are so used to European tourists, virtually everyone speaks some English. It was never a problem. Uriah, of course, is a native Turk, so we didn't have to reckon with that problem.
Right.
But the people there were very friendly and very used to foreign tourists, so it was never a problem.
Great, thank you. Okay, Nancy just said wonderful photos and talk. Thank you. Yes, thank
You're
you all.
welcome.
Beautiful. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to Lydia. Lydia is going to talk about traveling in the Harz Mountains and the Romanesque Road in Germany. And Lydia is one of our members of Falls of the James group, and she's also in our membership engagement committee. So take it away, Lydia.
Hi. So Ralph's formatting is going to be much better than mine, so I'm envious. Just as a little bit of a explanation of the area, the Harz Mountains are right smack in the middle of Germany. It's kind of like the Appalachians. They're the older mountains, so a lot of them are green on top, but there's still a lot to see. And then the Romanesque Road is a road that runs from Magdeburg down through Leipzig, and you're going to see all these beautiful wood timbered houses, these framed houses that have been around for centuries. So we started in Goslar, and we took the train from Goslar to Wernigerode, and I'll show you a couple of things from Goslar. It's on the edge of the mountains, but it is, and this is the Goslar town center. Goslar is kind of the home of, depending on your definition of who the first Holy Roman Emperor is. But this is, we're talking about back in the early 900s. So definitely medieval towns. This is the old cathedral that the facade on the front dates back from the 900s. There's been extensive work done. And by the way, this part is in West Germany. We're going to cross into the former East Germany too, and things will start to look a little different. This is the Kaiserpfalz. This is the home of the father of the first Holy Roman Emperor. And his name was Henry the Fowler and Matilda. And this is right outside. I just added this because I thought it was the most gorgeous little view of the town. The entire town that's not like right around the Kaiserpfalz, looks like this. And it's just quaint and lovely. Back end of the Kaiserpfalz, you can see some of the older parts of the building, like almost anything. You'll see where some of it's been redone and it looks a little bit newer. Moving on to Wernigerode, we didn't hike that part, but Wernigerode is a town in the middle, well, on the edge of the Harz Mountains, but in the middle, east to west, and I'll show you guys a map in just a little while. But this is a view of the gardens in the castle, and Wernigerode is, the castle is only from the 1800s, so it's not an old castle. It's beautiful, but it has really great views. And it's where a lot of hikers kind of start their trek because it's not too far from the tallest mountain, Brochen, that we're gonna see in a second. And it has some great trails going out to every part of the Harz Mountains. More of the garden. Just some of the half timber facades that you can see. And I just really love their little gargoyles that they had floating around. Okay, so this is kind of a view from the Wernigerode Castle. Off in the distance on your left, the one that's a little bit higher is the tallest mountain, Brochen. So that is the border between East and West Germany. And what in East Germany, what they did was they actually set up, I know the picture's bad, but this is a listening station. There's also a Doppler radar, but the other tower is a listening station that the East German government put up so that they could spy on places that were close-ish. It was actually pretty good in West Germany to see what was going on and to make sure that they're not invading and to do other spy-like things. So I thought that was really cool. You can go all the way up. It was a little bit out of the way for us because it's a 9-hour hike. So that's kind of a one-day only thing. This is Town Square in Wernigerode. This is part of the Romanesque Road, and all of the buildings, these, obviously the wood has to be replaced from time to time, but these buildings, most of them are dating back to the 13 to 1500s. And they've just kind of, slowly replaced it while still keeping the same building. All right. So we hiked from Wernigerode to Quedlinburg, and Quedlinburg is beautiful. You'll see in a second. Most of this was through what's called the Teufelsmauer, and it's kind of a rocky outcropping. But you'll see it's much like the Appalachians. It's just, it's a really pretty green mountainous area. These mountains, a long time ago, long time ago. So they actually have, there's places where they have found settlements from, I don't know if you call them settlements, but Neanderthal and early humanoids, even before humans, other than Neanderthals. So there have been people of some sort, or our greater family of people in this area for millennia. That is Goat Mountain. This is just kind of a typical view that you'll see. A lot of it's going through fields and pastures on the way from city to city. The trails are very well marked usually, but they even, Germany has apps that you can download in case you get lost or anything for a lot of the areas that we found. Quite helpful because not every trail is well mapped, but there are just thousands of trails in the area. So this is the beginning of the Teufelsmauer, and Teufelsmauer is the Devil's Wall. And this is this huge rocky outcropping of granite that's kind of on the side of the Harz Mountains on the eastern side. And it's a very steep, extremely steep climb up, and then you're kind of climbing over like the different outcroppings on the front. They even have, there's a bit of help that they give you. There's railings and things that you can attach onto. You can see my husband's trying to get up part of it up to the top of there. It's really craggy, but I was so impressed because even though we do a lot of hiking, and this was, I wouldn't say extremely hard, but it was challenging. And at the up at the top, there was a group of people, and one of the ladies was 92 years old. I'm like, well, I hope I can do that when I'm of age. Just some. And then this is kind of a view of part of the sheer side of it, just to kind of show you how extreme that is. Okay, and so this is going into Kvedenborg, and Kvedenborg is home to a very, very, very old abbey and castle. So the Ottonian dynasty, and those are the first Holy Roman emperors from not the current line, but from the current counting of Holy Roman emperors. And you're still kind of in the mountains at this point. You can see that's at the bottom of the castle. You still have the rocky outcroppings with these beautiful timbered houses. And what you're looking at is probably like shops and hotels. Everything looks like this. You really can't tell the difference between pensioners inn and, you know, somebody's house. The whole thing is just so picturesque. And then that is just a little bit away, but there's a beautiful trail that goes. It's basically the woods outside the castle that they would, you know, just take walks and everything. And these paths have been there for about a millennia, a little bit more. And then there's the town square. They have markets on a lot of days. It's definitely a tourist point. It's a little bit, it's mostly Germans. It's East Germany, so there's a lot of like Russians and Czech. I don't think we actually saw an American on this side. We did in Goslar, but it's just real quaint, and they have excellent food, and it's so beautiful. So we also took a trip to Gaunrada, and this was like my husband's favorite part. So Gjao was he was a companion of one of the otters, and he founded this church. This is St. Cyriacus, and that church is built in the 900s, and it's largely, I mean, I know they have to make repairs, but it's largely been untouched. Miraculous sometimes when you think about all the war that went around. And then the Russians, once they took it over, they maintained this area pretty well, instead of, you know, where you look at a place like Dresden that was completely torn down and rebuilt. That's Gyao's tomb. That I think it's 972. And the gorgeous original sanctuary painting, which I'm sure has been retouched, but that has been there for many hundreds of years. Okay, and so moving on, this is this fire salamander that I wanted to include because this is one of my favorite parts of the whole trip. So we also hiked down, and there's a place called Tala, very close to Kvedenborg, and the name Tala just means valley. And there's a river, the Boda River, and we hiked the entire Boda Tal, which is just the river valley, and it's these huge, steep cliffs, and it was one of the most gorgeous places that I've ever been. Let me show you some. So that's the River Boda. Not a very deep river, but that's kind of at the near Tala. This is one of my favorite pictures. It's just so green and so lush, and it doesn't seem like it, but it was May and it was very cold. And some of the granite. This is really interesting. I've never seen anything like it. We we thought maybe it was due to bombings or something, but this is actually natural rock formation. I don't know if you can see, but that's all loose rock. And that's kind of a natural field of it. You see it a lot on the Bodotala. Most of the time you're trying to, they actually in some places have like things up so that they're not falling onto the trails as much to keep it from being as slick. As probably the same type of thing as what Ralph was just talking about. Okay, and then this is a view. You can see almost just to the right of the middle at the bottom, the river kind of winding down through the mountains. And then right in the middle, if you look really carefully, you can see there's a bridge. There's a natural bridge that, if you look really, really carefully, there's people walking on. And you see a lot of the natural bridges in that area that are a little frightening, but they're amazing. And I'm sure that they're very sturdy. You know, thousands and thousands of people are going across it every year. And then that is from the top. So you can kind of see there's switchbacks going up from the bottom of the river up to the top. And then if you look, you'll see a building up at the very top right hand. And that is, there's a big area that's called the Hexentanzenplatz. It's the witches dance plaza. And all of the folk tales are that is where the witches would go dance, and on All Hallows, from, you know, back in the 1400s to the 1600s. So that's a pretty big draw. We didn't actually go to the Hexentanzenplatz, but it's pretty much just a field when they're not having like something going on. And this part is this trail, because there's several trails that go off of it, but this trail is actually the Goethe's trail. And then this is Goethe's Felsen. So Goethe, famous German author, he actually went he hiked the entire length of the Harz and wrote about it. And of course, you know, Germany is as proud of Goethe as the British are of Shakespeare. And so you see lots of stuff. Anytime if he touched a rock, it's there. But this outcropping was dedicated to him. And then that is the view if you kind of turn around away from the river. Those are mustard fields. And obviously Germans eat a lot of mustard. They have to grow them, but that area is known for growing tons and tons and tons of mustard. You know, then we all eat the delicious stuff. Okay, I will show you guys on a map. Let me get out of this real quick as to what we're looking at. So Goslar and then Wernigerode down into Quedlinburg. We flew in from Hanover. It's not far from Leipzig either. Yeah, it's just an amazing area. It's really beautiful. The food's great. If you get lost, there's an app. I mean, you can't really beat it. So
beautiful. Wonderful. Okay, well, let's see. Gwen asked, got to have something to dip your pretzel in. Yeah. Did you find out about a lot of the folk tales? Because my mother, you know, was born in Hanover and you know, is very familiar with a lot of the folklore. And so that's a really integral part of, I guess, that area, huh?
yeah, it is. There's a lot, and of course, you know, they've got shops selling all the, like you can get the little witches and broomsticks everywhere, and the kids have a lot of fun. They even have, if you're going with kids, they have one trail where you can get, you know, the stamps for the books and everything, and they'll give them a little like prize if they complete certain levels of it for free when you go to the shop. So they've made it fun for all ages. We went on one that was probably a little bit more challenging than the kids trails, but yeah, they make it, if you want to go and really stretch yourself, they've got it. If you want something that's a little bit more leisurely, they've got that too. I think that this area has been tourism for so many hundreds of years. They figured it out. So.
Yeah, very interesting. Great. Thank you very much, Lydia. Does anybody else have any questions for Lydia? Hiking in Germany? Yeah. And your husband is German, right? And that's kind of your connection with Germany?
Yeah, half. His mom is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And Nancy said, beautiful, Lydia. The one photo of the lush green and the river on the side is a treasure. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a beautiful place. Thank you very much, Lydia. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Glen's presentation, camping and paddling the natural wonders of Newfoundland. And again, Glen is one of our Falls of the James Group Executive Committee members, as well as our FOJG Political Chair, and also an Outings Leader, an environmental activist, and formerly served as the director of the Sierra Club Virginia chapter. Okay, Glen, take it away.
Okay, can you see and can you hear me? Can you see the show?
Yes,
Okay,
I
great.
can.
Yes.
Very good. All right. So I was up in Newfoundland in July of this year. It was part of a Sierra Club outing. That was the paddling part. But I decided to drive up there. And actually, this is a picture from the cabins where we stayed when we were doing the paddling trip. And that island right here, if you can see my cursor, is part of Witless Bay. And that's with a scope, you could actually see puffins nesting on this rock here. And lots of puffins swimming around down here. Okay, why isn't it moving? Okay, I just tried to make it move here. What's going on? Okay, I see. I think. Anyway, so where exactly is Newfoundland? A lot of people would ask me, where is Newfoundland? Well, it's an island. It's part of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And you can see Maine down here, right? You can see Maine down here. I drove all the way up here, all the way out to here, where you catch a ferry, and you can catch the ferry over to here, okay? So this is Labrador, which is on the mainland, and Newfoundland is an island, okay? Its time zone, interestingly enough, is an hour and a half ahead of Eastern Standard Time. So you've got the maritime time frame. If you've ever been to New Brunswick or Bay of Fundy, it's an hour ahead of us. But for some reason or other, Newfoundland is an hour and a half. It's a 1,300-mile drive from Richmond to the North Sydney Ferry, which is over here. And then you catch the ferry. Okay, so how do you get there to the island? Well, you can get there by air, but I chose to drive because I wanted to do some car camping before I did my paddle trip with the Sierra Club. And so the ferry came in over here. And anyway, this entire road through here is about 560 miles from one end of the island to the other. And you can see there's not a lot of roads in Newfoundland. Some people refer to it as Newfound Rock. But right up here is where we're going to go next in terms of Gros. I did some car camping is what I did. The ferry ride is 9 hours this way. And if you want to catch it from St. John's, which is the major city, it's a 14-hour ferry ride. And the ferry comes in around here in a place called Argentia. You can actually rent a little bed, a booth, a berth, I guess a berth you'd call it, on the ferry. I didn't reserve soon enough, but they have very nice, comfortable chairs. You can kind of go at night, and when you get up, drive over. And so when I landed here, I drove over here to Deer Lake and then into Gros Morne. Okay, this is the ferry, and it's really big. I'm not sure this picture shows how big it is. These big trucks go on the ferry. You can take your camper on the ferry. So they take a lot of people, and you got to make reservations because that ferry does get booked. The first park I went to is Gros Morne, as I showed you on the map where it is. It's on the west coast, and it's been referred to as one of the most beautiful places on earth. I'm sure my pictures won't do it justice. It's also a United Nations World Heritage Site, in part because of the geology and also because of the history. This picture here is of a place called the Tablelands, and this is one of the few places on Earth where you can actually look at mantle rock. I mean, this is the stuff down in the core of the Earth, and for some other reason, some strange reason, it popped up through here, and it's been there for I don't know how many millions of years. But you can see that hardly anything grows on there. In fact, the soil is so poor that most of the plants that grow there are like pitcher plants and sundews that actually don't live off the soil, but live off the insects that they catch. And I'll show you a picture of a pitcher plant flower. Okay, in fact, right here, that's picture me looking at it. This is the flowers actually hang down, and that may not be the best picture, but this is actually a flower of a pitcher plant. When it blooms, and the pitcher plant itself is that pitcher where the bugs crawl in and get consumed. There's lots of flowers out there. This is a beach in near the campground where I stayed, which was Trout River in Gros Morne. I camped there, and I came in here and had a lovely dinner one night. This little thing here is one of the Newfoundland, because it was so isolated, has a culture unique to itself. And people, got together and still do, and sing and have fun. And this is an ugly stick. It's a mop, and they put some jingles on it, and they put it in a boot, and you can actually play this thing. You kind of percussion beat, and then and anyway, it's an ugly stick. They call it an ugly stick. That's the musical instrument that's native there. Also, not surprisingly, some jerks wanted to drill for oil off of Gros Morne. And fortunately, that was defeated for now. And I found this poster in the restaurant where I was eating called Save Gros Morne, because they wanted to drill for oil off the coast of Gros Morne, which is a World Heritage Site. Lots of flowers. I forget what this one is, but a very pretty place. This is, and I should say, so I spent a couple of days at Gros Morne, enjoyed it, took several hikes, and then I went over to the other side of the island. I drove across Newfoundland, and I was still some distance from where I was going to paddle, but the other national park there is called Terra. And this was a beautiful overlook from a hike I took. You could see obviously you're on an island, so you're surrounded with water. There's lots of beaver everywhere, and this is a beaver dam, and again, lots of flowers everywhere you'd look. Just a beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, worth a trip. Okay, so I got to Witless Bay, which is on the Avalon Peninsula, which is a little part of the island that sticks out on the East Coast. And they didn't require you to have a lot of experience, but you would want to have paddled before, because we were paddling, in very cold water. So you had to basically bring good gear, neoprene tights and things like that. Nobody did fall in, but it was definitely a beautiful place. This is the name of the trip I took. It's called Kayaking in Newfoundland, Coasts, Coves, and Wildlife. And if you're interested in outings, of course, we have the local outings that Ralph was talking about earlier when we first got started, but the national outings can be found here, and they go all over the world, and most of them are in the United States, but I took this trip to Newfoundland because I'd always wanted to go. Tyler and I had actually been there once before, but we didn't go paddling, and so this time I wanted to do some camping and paddling, and I went solo, but Tyler and I had been there before and had a lovely time. And you can see just how lovely the views are. This is a cabin where we stayed, and that's my little van. It gets almost 30 miles to the gallon. In fact, I average 30 miles to the gallon driving up there. And here is a view from these cabins. And that's that little island right there again, where there are thousands of puffins nesting. Okay, and you could see them with a scope over there on the rocks, or they'd swim into this cove here. In fact, there were so many puffins that you had to paddle through them sometimes. Just another everywhere you went, there were waterfalls coming down off the rocks, and beautiful rock formations. And most of the time we were in protected coves. We did go out, and paddled out into the ocean one time. And we were very observant of the weather. We went with an outfitter on this paddle trip, a very experienced outfitter. So he knew what he was doing and where to go to see various critters. This is our outings leader. Her name is Leonora Kovacs. And these are just some of the folks that were on the trip. I mean, if you've ever been on a Circle of Outing, you kind of bond with the different people there. They're from all over the country, usually. This is at one of our breaks. Interestingly enough, the temperatures up there were hot for New England, for Newfoundland weather style. It was 80 degrees several of the days. And we did get some cold days, but 80 degrees is really hot up there. And the locals were complaining about it. And we were enjoying the nice weather. These fish here, and this is just a few of these, they're tiny. They're probably about 6 to 8 inches long. They're called capelin. And literally some of the beaches were just covered with them. I mean, this is just a few. I mean, literally wall to wall capelin. And as we paddled, sometimes you could look down and you could see, I'd say, millions of capelin swimming underneath of you. This is like a sardine. And this is what the whales feed on. Okay, so this is whale food. They've done some studies, and this is principally what they eat when they're in Newfoundland. Of course, they spend their summers in Newfoundland, and then they go south, along the Atlantic. This is just some of our crew paddling again. And sometimes these beaches that we landed on for a break were pretty smelly because there were lots of dead capelin. They actually swim up on the beach and lay their eggs in the sand. And then those eggs are right at the tide level, and then they hatch, and you got new capelins. Lots of said waterfalls. This is me standing aside the waterfall. There's another picture of the waterfall with the boat where we landed. There were a couple of places where we were actually able to paddle into some sea caves that were pretty cool. Just a lovely experience. More pictures of us kayaking. The outfitters are very careful about at least early on, so they'd make us get in the kayaks before we launched, and they would push us in. But a little bit later, they were more comfortable, and we got in the kayaks ourselves. Most of the people were pretty experienced, but there were some people who weren't. Again, just a lovely trip, and you can see the scenery is beautiful. This picture up here obviously was one of the days when the weather was not quite as good. And again, just cloudy. But I have to tell you that most of the days were sunny and in the 80s. Now, you can never guarantee what the weather's going to be like in Newfoundland. It's can be quite harsh. And if the weather's really bad, you may not be able to go out. But we went into a lot of protected coves. This is actually a cove here too. So this is considered protected waters. Okay, these are not my pictures. These are not my pictures. I didn't take too many pictures of wildlife. There was a guy there that did it, but we never got his picture. So this is a picture of a puffin. Literally, we saw hundreds of puffins swimming together, and we had to paddle through them. Now, we didn't bother them. They just kind of move aside or take off in flight. But most people love puffins. And as you may know, there used to be a lot of puffins in Maine, but because of climate change, they moved north. I think they all moved to Newfoundland because there's literally thousands or millions of puffins there, and they're beautiful birds. This is a minke whale, and we saw lots of minke whales. They tend to surface just like this. One of them surfaced right next to our boat, and then swam under one of our other boats. And they're gentle giants. So we got a lot of views of the minke whales. This is a humpback whale. Now, they didn't get quite as close, and I never saw any breach in terms of jumping out of the water, but a lot of them showed us the tail flukes. So this is again, none of these are my pictures, but we saw tail flukes of humpback whales most of the time, along with, and even more minke whales. Just really beautiful wildlife. We also saw some river otters because we were right there in the coves. At one point in time, we saw some sea otters that were there too. And there was a seal that followed us around most of one day that we were out there. Just lots of wildlife. Again, just another nice picture of what we were in. In fact, right here, if you can see my cursor, that's a whale. That's a minke whale. I didn't have my camera out when that one breached right next to our boat. And it wasn't scary at all. They move very gently and just cruise on by. But pretty amazing to see the minke whales, the whales. Okay. All right. These are just some of the beautiful rocks along the shoreline. Obviously it's lots of rocks there. And these are just a few pictures of rocks that people had picked up. We did take some hikes. One day we devoted to hiking, and this was a beautiful hike not too far from where we were on Witless Bay. You can see I got my Act on Climate t-shirt there. And this is a view from the trail here. And a nice little bridge that was there too. Just a lovely place to go and hike. And there's some more pictures of the trail that we were on. And remember, we're looking out into the ocean because that's the Atlantic. And if you're looking due east from there, you're looking towards England because we're the furthest easternmost, or you're looking at Greenland, I guess, which is a little further north. Okay, when the trip ended, I had to get the ferry back. And because I didn't book early enough, I had to wait a couple days to get the ferry. So I spent some extra time in Newfoundland after the hike left. And there's a place called Cape St. Mary's Ecological Reserve. And it's there's a sea stack. If you know what sea stacks are, they're basically pieces of mainland that were separated from the mainland and basically became a large rock standing out in the ocean. And this rock is probably like 300 meters high or maybe 200 meters high. Anyway, it's really high. And I'm standing on the mainland and I'm looking at the sea stack. And these are northern gannets for the most part. And there's literally thousands of them nesting on this rock. And they nest on the cliffs too. This is the top of the sea stack, but they nest along the cliffs too. And this is actually not my picture, but this is a picture of the sea stack here. And we're looking at this part of it here. And I hiked out here. Now, the day I did hike, the rain, well, I came out there early the first night I arrived, and it was so foggy. I took a little walk and I said, I could fall off this cliff and not even know where I was. So I came back the next morning early and I was the only one out there, and it was safe enough to see even though it was foggy and rainy. So you could see me in my rain gear. And I hiked out to the edge, not too close to the edge, and took these pictures with my iPhone. All these pictures were taken with my iPhone, nothing fancy. These birds make a lot of noise. There were kittiwakes there too, black kittiwakes. And no puffins this particular area. So anyway, just a marvelous trip full of car camping and great day hikes and then this 1 week paddle. And that's the end of it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the trip. Again, this is where we stayed on the paddle trip. The cabin is right behind here. I think it's probably on the deck of the cabin and looking out at the sun. Rise or sunset? I can't remember, but loved the trip. It was great. And the puffins would come in right down here. And as I said, there were puffins nesting on this rock. I'll stop. Okay.
Wow. Beautiful. All right. Well, Glenn, let's see. There are some questions. Gwen asked, did you arrange the trip yourself?
I organized the whole car camping trip and made my own reservations. The paddle was done through this Sierra Club. It was a Sierra Club outing. And so if you go to sierraclub.org/outings, you'll see the whole host outings. I signed up for this trip. In fact, as several people referenced the pandemic, I scheduled up this trip 3 years ago and it got canceled 2 years in a row. And then finally happened this past summer.
Great. And she also asked, how long was the drive, I guess, all the way up to Newfoundland?
Oh, it's 1,300 miles to the ferry. And then a 9-hour ferry ride. So I think I took my time. I drove about 6 hours a day. So it took me about 3 days to get up there, as I recall.
Wow.
You could make the trip faster, but I had no reason to hurry. I took my time up there. And the very first day I stayed with the outings leader who has a place near the Hudson River. And we paddled on the Hudson River. So we could get to know each other. She just had, because I'd been talking to her for 3 years as we were trying to get this trip to go, she came to know me, and we had some things in common in terms of our families. And so she invited me to stay and paddle with her on my way up. So
Cool. Lee asked, how strong is the puffin population up there?
oh, I don't think there's a puffin problem up there, other than maybe too many. In fact, interesting story, and there's a video that I could send around if people are interested. The puffins actually fledge at night, and they usually would fly towards the moon. But unfortunately, with a lot of streetlights and things like that, some of the puffins end up on the roads in Witless Bay, right where I was. And there's a group of volunteers have come together to rescue the puffins. And so they go out at night on the evenings when the puffins are expected, the baby puffins. And they go out there with the laundry baskets and things like that in their cars, and they catch them and put them in these little cages and baskets and take them to a veterinarian where they are checked out and then re-released into the water so they are not run over by cars. And that's pretty cool. I didn't see any of the puffins on the street. I think we were there a little bit later, but there's been a lot of effort by the locals to protect the puffins from the lights. And in the area where we stayed, there wasn't a lot of lights at night. They kind of dimmed them because we were right on the Witless Bay Ecological area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what time of year was this?
This was in July.
July.
Like I said, if you
Okay.
go up there, you definitely see puffins. If you want to see puffins, you'll see puffins up there. in
Okay.
Witless Bay.
And then
Not to
Nancy
mention
just made,
whales too.
yeah. And Nancy just made a comment about after the bombings on 9/11, any flight in the air was directed by FAA to Newfoundland for its very large airfield. The tiny
That's-
town graciously hosted 4,000 plane passengers for a minimum of 2 days until the skies were slowly reopened for flights. And a musical was made about the experience, Come From Away.
That's right. And someone recommended, I had missed that, but I guess I remembered it vaguely. Someone recommended the book. And so I listened to the book on Audible on my trip up. So that was how I spent some of my time listening to that book. And it really does portray the Newfoundlanders as really kind and generous, open people. And I found them to be that way. I mean, obviously this is hard to characterize the entire population, but Newfoundland has a culture of its own because it's been so isolated for so long.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much, Glenn. That was beautiful too. And what adventures. Okay, well, thank you. Well, let's go ahead and Connor, I see Connor, you're here. Connor, again, is our Virginia chapter political and legislative director, and wants to give us a little talk about how we can try to influence our legislators, right?
Thank you so much. Excuse me, I'm starting to lose my voice. It's been a long day and it's getting late, so I will not keep you all too long, but I appreciate the space and the time to share some information with you all. So I'll start off with just some high level information and then drill down into what I actually want y'all to do. So earlier this year, the National Sierra Club sent out information about a grant, and they were offering money to the states to implement what they termed any program that would help the chapters and the local groups grow. So working with Gustavo Angeles, our then at the time our environmental justice program coordinator, and now our acting director, we put together a grant proposal that went off to national about how we would engage our local groups and our local group members in increasing the time that they spend advocating to their legislators, not just during session, but throughout the year. And slowly what came of this was our decision to sort of create what we are calling distributed legislative advocacy teams, or DLATs for short, which is our effort to really expand who legislators see from the Sierra Club at its core. All of the legislators in the General Assembly, for better or worse, know me. Most of them know Bob Shippey, our legislative committee chair. But the goal is to expand the voices of the Sierra Club and expand when they see members from the Sierra Club, so that when I go in, ask them to do something, I'm not the only voice in their head, that they're actually hearing, that they have actually heard from constituents in their district about the issues that we're coming to talk to them about. That's the long and the short of what we're doing. And so we've decided to sort of formalize as best we can the process by which we do this. And so we want to ask you all, and I'm going around the state to other groups as well, to become a part of this. And we're not going to just leave you hanging. So we're going to do it in a very structured and orderly way. We're going to start off on January 3rd, 2023. Cannot believe it's 2023, with an introduction and the first training session. So our plan is to not just send off a bunch of people to talk to legislators about whatever they want, however they want. We do want to have some structure to it. And so what we're going to do is offer trainings for the first few months of 2023, January, February, March, and April. And they're going to be once a month. They won't be long, but they'll be an opportunity to go in depth on different topics. So the first one will be fundamentals of the General Assembly, how power really works, where if you want to learn more about how come that bill I'm advocating for is dying, or how do I get a bill passed, you can attend that one. We'll then move on to other trainings, which will encompass items like equity and equitable community engagement, how to lift the voices of people that are trying to make change in their own communities. And then we'll actually get really, really specific. How do people who are members of the Sierra Club go about actually scheduling a meeting with a legislator? Do you just call these people? Do you send them an email? What do you do? Well, we found that there's a lot of really engaged folks at the Sierra Club who already do this work, and another giant pot of people who are willing to be involved but haven't and aren't sure how. We want to try to address those gaps. So all that said, what I'm going to do is put a link in the chat here. I would love for you all to register for our program on January 3rd, regardless of whether you can make it on January 3rd or not. I'm adding that caveat because I want to collect everyone's information so that I can begin communicating specifically with the people who are interested in being a part of this. So if you could fill out that Zoom, and regrets if you can't make it to the January 3rd, but there will be others. So I would like to just have you all register, and once you do, that'll keep you on the invite list as the program continues, and you can join the other sessions. It's not a one and done, that if you can't make it, you can't keep going, or you have to commit to doing all of it. We're not trying to be exclusive, we're trying to be inclusive in increasing the skills and knowledge and camaraderie of the Sierra Club members across the local groups. And just as an example, we've had a lot of success with our Great Falls group up in Northern Virginia and how they've built relationships with legislators. And I anecdotally tell this story because I anecdotally told it to the funders when we were applying for this grant, which is a great text message that I got from a legislator this past session. And there was a group of Great Falls group members that had met with this particular legislator over the summer leading up to the legislative session. And the senator was about to vote on something and couldn't find the contact information for these folks. And so she sent me a text message during the session and said, what did she said something like, will all of your people be really mad at me? Which way should I vote? And I said, wow, that is anecdotally a very important story for the importance of how we build our connections with legislators. It can't just be me. A lot of them like me, maybe some of them don't, I don't know, but it can't just be me. And that story really reinforced to me the importance of bringing these faces and voices of the Sierra Club to these legislators when it's not time to vote. Because when it is time to vote, they're going to be looking back on the stories and the meetings and the calls that they had and going, uh-oh, I think that really important person in my district is going to be really mad at me if I do this. So I better not do that, or I better check. And this is how we build true power across the Commonwealth when we actually make it mean something. So that's my spiel. And I appreciate your time. And I know it's late, and it really does feel like, particularly for all of you in the Falls of the James group boundaries, that there really could not be more going on right now if we tried. But I appreciate your patience and listening to me explain sort of why we are doing this and how we're trying to make it a success. And ultimately with that story, sort of drive home the importance of getting involved in it. And like I said, don't feel like you're making a major commitment. These are trainings that we want to offer to increase the knowledge of everyone and increase the time that we get to spend together. So I'll stop there and pass it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Connor. Glenn, you have a question?
Yeah, Connor, so the first meeting is on the 3rd of January, is that right? Okay, just a quick question. So will we be able to reach out to our entire membership in the Falls of the James group? Because obviously, you know, our usual suspects, including folks on this call and the 50 or so people that might show up at a meeting sometimes that we have, you know, is just a small percentage of folks. So it may be great to offer that opportunity to other people who may like to get involved.
Yes, absolutely. I can provide a draft email that can go out to the full Falls of the James membership group. I'm also, I saw Tyler on, oh, there, Tyler is still here. I'm also going to do the same thing for the York River group as well, so that we can get folks registered and keep, you know, keep the, oh boy, it's getting late. I can't remember what I was going to say. Keep the as wide as possible in terms of welcoming people into this. Like I said, the more inclusive, the better.
Great. Thank you very much, Connor. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, I just am going to go to Lee now. And Lee, I'm going to try to share my screen. And let's see. Let me see if I can share my screen. And I want you to go over some announcements for advocacy. Oh, there it is. Share my screen. Okay, there you go. Can you see anything yet?
It's coming.
It's
Double
coming?
click. Oh, there's Connor.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes,
you-
I can. All right. So I guess the first announcement we want to make is our, can y'all hear me okay? I'm getting some feedback. Give me a thumbs up. Yes. All right. So as you know, in September 2021, Richmond City Council unanimously passed the RVA Climate and Ecological Emergency Resolution. And within that resolution, there were 13 points that needed to be followed up with ordinances, things that could make them accountable for the lovely things they put in the resolution. So part of the process of getting this resolution passed was to get some working groups together to drive momentum behind each one of these 13 initiatives. And Glenn and I are part of the Electrify RVA group. We're also, Joe and I are part of the Greening Richmond group, which deals with tree canopy and heat islands. And if you could scroll back up to the top of that, there we go, thanks. So our first action alert, a call to action we have for you all is to tell decision makers that the budget for our future. And basically budgets represent priorities. And our coalition has drafted quite a long list of initiatives that we want funded in this year's, which means 2024's budget. And we have an easy one-click link that will send, if you're a city resident, it'll send an email to your city council representative and one to the mayor with links to all of our demands. And if you would like to scroll down, many of us met with individual council members over the summer, and we've been attending land use meetings and government ops meetings, trying to shepherd these initiatives across the finish line. Also on that note, Glenn has been working to, as I said, with the Electrify RVA group, and they are very interested in gathering data on leaking methane gas within the city of Richmond. Some of you may be aware that Richmond, Virginia is one of 3 municipal owned gas works in the state. And they currently have very little accountability. One of the things we're pushing for in the budget is to set up an oversight committee for them. But one of the things we are going to be asking you all to do in the new year, Glen's been working hard to find us funding through grants with Sierra Club to purchase a methane sniffer. And he just got an email today from National that he got the green light to apply, and hopefully it will be a slam dunk once he submits the paperwork, and we anticipate being able to launch community methane sniffing parties in a neighborhood near you, probably the end of January and into February, into the spring. And honestly, we could be doing this probably till the end of the summer. We're going to be partnering with Virginia Interfaith Power and Light with their green congregations. And I know there are youth groups at multiple congregations across the city are going to be able to help us. But we would love to have a lot of Sierrans out there too. If you have a church group that would like to do this in your city church, we would love to have you. But look for, what is it called? The sign up genius that Joe likes to use. We'll probably use that format again, send it out to an email to all of our Falls of the James group members about mid-session, end of January, early February. And I guess I'll kick it back to Siobhan for the outings update.
Okay, thank you, Lee. And Glenn, did you say you had something too?
Yeah, a couple of things real quick. First off, January 13, okay, is the Rally for a Livable Future at the Bell Tower at 12 noon. And Connor and Lee and I and Tim Connor and Tim on staff are helping to organize an effort there that will basically be the first Friday after the General Assembly session starts. And so all that good training you got on January 3rd, you can start to put to use on the 13th after that Rally for a Livable Future at the Bell Tower. So put that on your calendar and we'll be in touch. The other thing I want to mention too is many of you are aware, I'm sure, that our congressman, for many of us anyway, who live in the 4th District, Donald McEachin, passed away. And the general election to replace him has been set for February 21st. February 21st, that's the general special election. With a 45-day early voting opportunity, that pushes things back. And so the Democrats are going to be having a primary, what's called a firehouse primary, on December the 20th. That's next Tuesday. And the impression I had was it would be the same hours. It would start at 6 in the morning and run until 7 at night. That's not finalized. The locations are not finalized either. Because this is a firehouse primary, that means it will, that's the term, they used to be held at the firehouses, but they'll be different places. So you can expect to find out that there'll probably be a location somewhere in Richmond or Chesterfield County, Henrico County, and then in some of the jurisdictions that run all the way to the North Carolina border. So on December 20th, there will be a primary election. You can just go and you can vote. And they'll check you in and confirm. And the only thing you have to do, because it's a primary, is you have to sign a pledge that you will support the Democratic nominee. I should mention that those nominees, well, let's put it this way, those candidates that are running for this job include Joe Morrissey, Lamont Bagby, Jennifer McClellan, and then a couple others that I've seen listed are Tavares Marks, and also a former delegate, Joseph Preston from Petersburg. So I'm not sure who all they are. I don't think the club is going to have an opportunity to do an endorsement. I know that Connor checked with National about it, but it's impossible. The time frame is impossible. Some people are complaining about it. Remember, it's the governor that dictated the time frame because he set this election date for February 21st, and we got to have 45 days of early voting. So the Democrats and Republicans both have to send in their nominees, finalize their nominees by next Friday a week. And that's why this primary is on Tuesday. And I'll just say that you can decide who you want to vote for. I know who I support. I'm supporting Jennifer McClellan. That's my personal opinion. And there'll be a lot of effort to get signatures on her petitions, to raise some money for her, and just basically for whatever candidate you're looking for, you'll need to show up and vote in one of these locations to be determined. We don't know yet because they're scrambling to get the places located. I'll stop there. Looks like Connor's got a question or a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Glenn, I just wanted to add, so probably earlier today, well, I think I've been on maybe 12 Zooms today, I can't remember. They did release the locations. I put them in the chat, and then I saw Ralph put them. Ralph and I had the same idea. We're both putting them in the chat at the same time. So if you want to vote in that party primary, those are the locations. It is 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. I will also mention that we are not going to be able to endorse, but after speaking to National, I can encourage all members of the Sierra Club to use their own individual voice and networks to support who they would like to support. So you're free to do that, as always, as normally the case. I will also mention that I did get a question related to how can we inform people about the election. Then I ran into another wall. I actually cannot send a C3 voting information to our members in the 4th Congressional District because it is not a state-run election. It's not a government-run election. It's a party-run election. So I cannot advocate that people participate in a party-run election in a C3 way. Like I usually can send out an email that says, hey, go vote at your precinct, find it here. Not allowed to do that in this instance. So again, according to the rule books and everything, and according to what we just know, it's a reliance on personal networks to spread the word. And of course, everyone's willing to support who they're going to support. And since it's 8:30, and I can also add my personal opinion as a Sierra Club member, I'm also voting for Jennifer McCall.
So I just looked at that list. How do you know which one you're supposed to vote?
Anyone, you can vote at anyone.
Any of them.
Okay.
Doesn't
And I
matter.
think we should be a unified front, this whole splitting crap. Like, you know, that's how the Republicans win. They all do, they just listen to whoever and I'm very frustrated.
Well, the
So-
Republicans will have their own nominating process, and then the Democratic nominee and the Republican will be on the ballot in February. Okay, so all you're doing right now is choosing the Democratic nominee.
I know, and that's important.
Oh, it's very important. Yes, it is.
That's why
Okay.
it's good. Thank you for telling us who you were supporting because, you know, we had a call from somebody I'd never heard from the other night. And I'm like, what election are they talking about? And now you're telling me this. And I'm going,
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Okay, all right, thank you. Well, let me go ahead and just finish off real quick here. The screen, can you see my screen yet? Hold on. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, Ralph has a hike that he's going to have January 7th, 10 a.m., a walk through Maymont Park. So if you're interested, I'll send this link. I'm also going to be sending out a January newsletter, probably January 3rd. So I'll have this link in here, but you can also find it on our Sierra Club Falls of the James group calendar as well. So if you want to go for a nice, 3-mile hike, 2.5 hours, go ahead and sign up. Also, our January program, Lydia is going to be presenting again, along with Lisa Thompson, about gardening, urban gardening, backyard and community, growing our health and ecology. So Lisa is going to stress how to make your own compost, biological insect and disease control, and talk about her volunteering at Shalom Farms in Belmead Park. And Lydia is going to talk about how to start your own backyard garden with seed starting and preparing the land. So definitely register for that. I'm going to have a hike back in February at the Falls of the James group, at the Pony Pasture Park. So that's going to be about a 2 or 3 mile hike in the Pony Pasture Park. And we may even go along Riverside Drive if you're interested. So sign up for that. Also, we're working on a program for February at the University of Richmond. We're still working out the details on that. We're actually moving it back. Usually we have our programs the 2nd Tuesday of every month, but we're going to move it to the third week because it's Valentine's Day, the 2nd week. And so a lot of you of our students, you know, they're young and in love. And so we decided to kind of push it back so that we wouldn't have any conflicts there. Then we've also got a program in March about the importance of habitat connectivity and protecting Virginia's wildlife corridors with Courtney Hayes. So that should be really interesting. And then our last program right now we've got scheduled in April is about fast fashion, a gaze into the environmental impact and ethical dilemmas caused by the fashion and textile industries. How did this happen? What was occurred? And can we change? Presented by Carl Green, who was one of our presenters on the monarch butterflies. So anyway, that's our lineup. And so I'm hoping that, you will be able to attend some of those programs in the future. So again, I want to thank so much Ralph and Lydia and Glenn for their wonderful presentations, their travel presentations. And I want to thank Connor for giving a presentation about how we can become more involved and be a voice to our, our issues. Let's see. Nancy said, I'm not on the 4th, but do want to go. Okay. I'm not in the 4th, but okay. Nancy's saying, I'm not in the 4th, but don't want to lose any Democrats in the General Assembly. Yeah, definitely. So anyway, thank you again for coming tonight and appreciate it. And I hope you all have a merry, happy holiday, and we'll see you in January. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Bye, Siobhan.
Thank you,
Okay.
Siobhan.
Emery. Okay. Thank you all. Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.